Where can UCLA basketball have room for improvement? Well, plenty of places, but we'll talk about it here on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm your host, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer, as we ring in the new year. Welcome already to 2024. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, subscribe, review. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Well, it's no secret that UCLA has been young. A lot of inexperience has cost the Bruins many winnable games for the Bruins this year. Even if they needed to scrap and claw their way to win it, they've just not found ways to finish late in games, with the Bruins' late 5-point loss to Oregon being the latest example for a team that now sits under 500 as we head into the new calendar year in 2024. UCLA 6-7, 1-1 in conference play. Only one true road win this year. That was against Oregon State. 2 wins away from home, only one against a D1 team, and 4-2 at home, which means the Bruins have lost their highly touted, at the time, longest active winning streak at home in the nation. What the Bruins now have to battle with is, yes, it's very unlikely at this moment what they've shown so far that they can put together wins and find ways to maybe put themselves in the at-large conversation. There's certainly opportunities for this team to do so, but as this team hasn't learned to do yet, they haven't learned to win. And yes, 6-7, they're not the worst Bruins team of all time, and I have lots of hope for them. Maybe it's in 2 years, maybe it's in a year, maybe it's come the conference tournament when they just need to play well for a week and their season's life depends on it. This is a team that has been so close way too many times, but at this point, UCLA finds themselves on the losing end of quite too many close games down the stretch. Mick Cronin, with practice open on January 2nd to the media, giving quotes, giving pressers with other players available, he was quoted as saying, you got to play smart basketball to win games. Is it innate? Is it a cold-blooded, quote-unquote, the cliche, the killer, right? The ice cold, everybody's smacking the veins nowadays. You see kids hit threes. They're doing everything, right? Is it innate, clutch time? Do you need that big bucket getter? Well, it's not that UCLA is failing last-second shots. It's as a team, as a whole, they're not finding ways to win those games close late. Case in point, their first game that they lost this season, a game they led by double figures, were in complete control of against Marquette, who is a top 10 team, and they should have won that game on a neutral site out in Hawaii. They were very close to beating Gonzaga down the stretch when they had a small lead early in the second half. Got the ball with the 3-point deficit, couldn't win that one. Villanova, they lost by 9, had a chance, should have won that one. Ohio State led at the end of the first half. CSUN, they were within a point. Maryland, they got it to within fairly close, right? They're down big against both CSUN and Maryland in that week. Oregon, goodness gracious, they should have won that game. They're up 5 with 15 minutes to go. I know that's a small margin. But then what happens? They give it back-to-back threes. Cronin talks about playing smart for this team that they don't have some standout super player, right? They have no current guys who are going to be NBA first-round picks next year and immediately contribute. Now, I know Berke has the talent to do so, and I'll get to him in a moment. But nobody's going to all of a sudden be a 4-year senior, go translate that game to the NBA and be an immediate success story like Jaime Jaquez Jr. is as he's making his trip back to LA in the SoCal area. Mick Cronin alluded to him, talked about how Jaime and Brandon Williams have some similarities in terms of learning and committing and being with good attitudes all the time at practice, which is why we see Brandon Williams starting and playing quite a bit for being one of the youngest freshmen in the country across all of college basketball. And he's earning minutes. But he's not that 5-star, 30-point-per-game superstar that UCLA would need to have this team turn around with just one guy. He is one of many pieces that needs to go right for UCLA. And Williams, his freshman struggle, as all the Bruins have had this season, this one for him was against Oregon turnovers, which was the big key as to why the Bruins lost. Not just Brandon Williams, but overall as a team, 16 turnovers leading to a game where UCLA practically coughed it up. A game where the Bruins out-rebounded the Ducks. And yes, they could shoot a three, but they turned it over. And shooting is a much bigger issue, too, because UCLA has no perimeter shooting. Teams have to pack it in. There's no room for a Dembona to work. And now you're looking for guys to make heroic mid-range contested jumpers, three-point shots that maybe their game isn't designed to take 4 or 5 shots to do, and yet they're missing the majority of them as of late. So can the Bruins clean up the turnover bug? You can't, as I mentioned in the most recent Locked On UCLA episode, you can't turn it over 16 times and miss 16 threes in 19 attempts. You cannot have both. And the Bruins are not good offensively. Mick Cronin already said it. We're not winning 90-85. Their next opponent I'll talk about coming up at the end of the podcast, Stanford, just went and beat number 4 at the time, Arizona, 100-82. And all they do is shoot the lights out of the basketball. They shoot a lot of threes, and if they do, they'll put 100 on you, a century piece in regulation. Can UCLA ever be that? That's not going to be this year's team, and I'm not sure under Mick Cronin they'll probably ever have a team that could consistently put up enough three-point shots to make a lot of scoring happen. So the Bruins got to take care of the basketball. They have struggled mightily in key parts of games with entry passes, bounce passes, getting the ball across half court against semi-pressure. When the game's on the line, it's either a mixture of two things, which is as simple as basketball gets: a terrible turnover or a horribly misplaced, misguided, contested long perimeter shot. Those are the two things that have cost the Bruins in close games. The inability to make the smart play, and when they probably have the ability to knock down the wide open three-point shot. And Mick Cronin said this: we let some guys shoot threes against Oregon that we shouldn't have. That is Captain Obvious for all of us. And I know Mick Cronin, he sees his team. He knows what he has. He's basically saying the same thing, that, hey, we're not going to be able to shoot the ball consistently. We're not good enough overall as a team at this moment to score. And what he alludes to is, hey, you look at younger players, you look at older players. We've got youngsters. They're going to shoot much worse than 4th, 5th-year seniors. Look at Watkins, how he would hit an occasional big-time dagger three in his time at UCLA. David Singleton, look how great he shot his last year at UCLA. So it's a very young team that's learning, one, to not only choose to take the right shot, take quality shots, but be good enough to take a quality contested shot. And the Bruins just don't have any player that has that collection of talent to do so thus far. My way this Bruins team can get a little bit more growth is obviously Mick Cronin has pounded the hammer to the nail that Dembona is their best player. And while I can argue he's their most important player, you can talk about different things about being best. And I think clearly we're seeing signs and flashes of Berke Buyuktuncel, who is clearly the most talented, in my mind, freshman. I know Brandon Williams is having the most production in this moment. Vide's been hurt. He's reportedly working his way back into game shape. He finally, according to Cronin, was at practice, and we'll see if he's ready to play for Stanford from his ankle injury. Devin Williams is buried at the back behind a lot of big-name talent in front in terms of guys who are playing power forward or centers, and he might be someone in the future. That's just not someone the UCLA is using right now. Brandon Williams is getting time. Adai Mara has been struggling defensively to get enough time on the court. But for me, Berke, it's clear as day when he can hit a casual three. He's done so in back-to-back games, nothing but net, where most UCLA players on this roster struggle to make a couple outside of Will McClendon this year, who is this year's surprise of the team leader for three-point shooting percentage coming into the opening week of Pac-12 play. Now for UCLA, I think Berke, I've already mentioned this again, Berke needs more touches. He needs to get the ball. And I remember listening to the broadcast against Oregon. They were talking about Cronin wanting Berke to take more shots. Now the Bruins got to feed it to him. Bona is important, but if Berke, along with maybe a couple more Will McClendon threes attempted, I can live with him going 2 for 5. He's just got to take 5 3-point shots now. You bring in Berke, you give him more shots, give him closer to 10, 12 shots. Maybe take the load off the shoulders of Dylan Andrews so far, who is having and being asked to do so much that maybe 12 shots per game at this moment, every game, is not where you want it. He's talented enough to shoot it efficiently. We've already seen that this season. Maybe finding ways to give Berke the ball, let him shoot it. Clearly the ability to get a shot off in traffic, fall away jumper, go with the dribble. Once he gets his footing, underneath him, right, gets fully acclimated. He's close for someone that hasn't played that many games, Berke. If he can get more touch, just keep getting him the ball, all of a sudden I think UCLA's offense could be a little bit that much better. Just that much better. Now there's been all this talk about who to tweak for the starting lineup. UCLA has not had an optimal starting lineup with all the players firing at all cylinders once this season. He has not had that. He's had probably ideal scenarios where you have a Bona and a Berke, you mix in Andrews, and you can go back and forth between who the shooting guard is. At the moment, the Bruins have to play Sebastian Mack. Mick Cronin's already alluded to that. Despite his youth and inexperience and some turnovers, he has to play him because of his slashing and scoring ability. And yet you can battle between who the 3 or the 4 can be. Is it a Lazar? Do you want Fible's athleticism in there? And do you want Berke to dominate? Berke must touch the ball when he's in the game at all costs. Not every possession. The Bruins can go get easy plays with Bona, and Lazar's going to hit more threes as the season goes on. I believe that, as opposed to him struggling in this game against Oregon. But you need the likes of Berke to touch the ball. Bona not fouling clearly changes the game for UCLA. So what combination for UCLA can lead to less turnovers and better shooting? Seems simple, and they could probably live with terrible shooting if they just don't turn it over 10 times a game. If they can be efficient at just passing the ball around, entry passes. It's one thing if, say, Bona or whoever's playing down there is missing an easy bunny at the rim, right? Easy shot at the rim. It's another thing if you're going to give up a steal and it goes to a fast break opportunity, then Bona's trying to chase down a block and foul somebody. You'd rather have them, be super athletic, pound the boards, keep going, then all of a sudden turn it over 20 times. So again, they got to find ways to get the better shooters chances to shoot the ball more. Very simple. And not have guys who don't have the hot hand shoot the ball as many times as they do. In a game they weren't down 15 where they didn't need so many threes. It was valuing possession, which Mick Cronin is trying to instill in this team, trying so desperately that possessions are so valuable, when I believe what he said was they cost a fourth of their possessions in that game just to simply coughing it up for turnovers. And even if they missed it, just getting the shots off could lead to fouls, more opportunities at the rim, putting more pressure on their shorthanded post presence that Oregon didn't have with all their injuries down low. Just simply missed opportunities. You see the athleticism of Bona who can put it back up and in. You mix those things, all of a sudden the Bruins might find ways to win more games if they can just not turn it over as much, value the possession. Even if they're shooting so terribly, they've got the rebounding thing down, I think, a bit more. Finding a more optimal lineup, and the shooting could improve with a little bit more McClendon shooting threes. I'm not advocating for him to start, play 30 minutes. Just give him more looks. Those 5 to 6 looks Lazar's getting should go to McClendon and let him fire. Light the fire underneath Berke and McClendon and say, hey, I'm giving you the green light. Shoot the ball. And I think the Bruins will be a little bit better off for it with a very offensive-minded Stanford Cardinal team coming into Pauley Pavilion to be the Pac-12 home opener for the Bruins this season. We'll talk about the Stanford Cardinal later at the end of this podcast. Next, of course, as you saw, UCLA women's basketball sold out Pauley Pavilion and took down USC and JuJu Watkins in a very fun back-and-forth topsy-turvy affair with the Bruins coming out on top, proving I think they're the better team, even though that game could have gone either way, depending on a couple of clutch-made shots. Next on Locked On UCLA. All right. I know the NFL season's wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can get up to $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Again, that's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you're not doing this, you got to go do this right now. So the app's super easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet with the live same game parlays. You can find bets in their new Explore tab. You can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, the best way to find popular parlays. Hey, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel, an official partner of the NFL. Cruising on and Locked On UCLA. Zach with you guys. We're going and flipping the script to the best team on the hardwood, basketball-wise, in UCLA right now. That is the UCLA women, who are the only team to have sold out Pauley Pavilion in this academic year. And all of a sudden, they are the team who's unbeaten, still number 2 in the country, can't unseat South Carolina, getting much love by national media and yada, yada, yada. I'm not going to hear about the naysaying nonsense because this UCLA team is really good. Even the LA Times talking about, hey, that was a hot take. All the press was there for a sold-out game between UCLA women's hoops against USC. 2 of the top 6 teams in the country, probably 2 of the top 10, maybe 2 of the top 5 by the time this season comes to an end, between Corey Close's bunch versus Lindsay Gottlieb and the fighting JuJu Watkins Trojans team, right? UCLA 12-0, 1-0 in Pac-12 play. 0-1 are the Trojans now, who have now lost 9 straight. We'll say that again, 9 straight to UCLA, and they fall to 10-1. Both teams had probably close to the same signature win, which was Ohio State on a neutral floor, or away from home, I should say, for both teams. And what's clear is what I thought for this game, UCLA is a deeper team, while USC did have 2 players score 23 or more points. JuJu, in a bad game, in a not JuJu Watkins-like game, still put up 27 and 11, drew 8 fouls, got to the line at will. That's scary. That arguably the next greatest college basketball player is, on a bad night, still going to put up 30 on you in a big game on the road in a hostile road environment. That's pretty scary to think about. That is how good JuJu is. But we're not here to just ooh and ah about JuJu Watkins. We're going to talk about the likes of UCLA, who came out and punched the Trojans in the mouth. Because the reason they're a deeper team, even with the loss of Emily Vissoir for the season, is because of the recruiting class from the class of 22, right? You've got the Kiki Rice, the Legend Jones, the Hawkeses, who all made some contribution for UCLA. Then you get the transfer of Lauren Betts, who didn't really have her best game, close to 50% shooting, 15 points, 8 rebounds, but it was the spreading of the wealth for UCLA over everybody. What it was making shots, defensively, rebounding. It wasn't Betts' best game shooting in the paint. That was clear because there's a couple of gimmies she missed, but how did she make an impact? Being a +9 when she was on the floor, she blocked 6 shots. That one thing UCLA did not have in previous years. I'm going to emphasize it over and over again. What they did not have for a team that possibly could have made a deeper run last year and maybe could have given South Carolina a bit more fits in their Sweet 16 matchup and maybe could have knocked them off in South Carolina when they played the first time. That post presence that Lauren Betts brings is the near double-double she averages, the ability to swat shots when teams try to score in the paint. And then, hey, you spread the wealth. UCLA, a bit better, more consistent shooting the three-point shot. In their 71-64 win over SC, UCLA, a little cold in the beginning and end of the game when they shot 22% the first quarter and under 20% in the fourth, was when they put up 44 points in the middle part of the game, a part of the game where UCLA normally struggles in the second quarter but comes out and dominates in the third. It was none other than London Jones coming out party, which we already knew she could shoot, but she was the latest for a team that just tries to find, quote-unquote, the hot hand that can get the job done that night. And on a night where Charisma Osborne offensively wasn't doing it, although you go look at the highlights UCLA will post, you see how tenacious she was defensively, practically harassing JuJu anytime she had the basketball on the floor in her hands. It was London Jones hitting shots. When the Bruins needed to calm down and get stuff going in the second half, who went and took the ball down the floor dominantly with a much improved game? It's Kiki Rice. Getting to the line, making some free throws, making easy buckets. 12 points, yeah, that's not the flashy 27, but her ability to control the game, control the tempo, and when she needs to get a 6-8 point spurt, she can do that. They can do that with Lauren Betts. London Jones, obviously, was the hero for the game with her making clutch threes in the first half, clutch dagger threes in the fourth when SC got to within one. and were able to pull away for the Bruins later in the game once JuJu went down. I believe what Bill Plaschke wrote in the LA Times due to cramps and her being banged up. She had already missed the previous SC game against Long Beach State, so she wasn't fully healthy, but UCLA was able to outscore them in the paint, plus 12. That's not something UCLA could have consistently done last year. Turnovers. Despite committing more turnovers than SC, the Bruins got out and ran, 15 points in the fast break, and outscored USC plus 10 on points off turnovers. Oh, and better yet, they shot the ball better from three in this game. What is scary, though, is that USC made it a game on the road in a hostile sellout environment, and these two teams are going to meet up in a couple weeks. Is it likely that UCLA goes through this regular season unbeaten? As great and as good as this team is, top to bottom, even with a significant injury to Bessoir for UCLA, I'm not sure they can go the complete season unbeaten. They still got to go to SC, go to Stanford, and play many top 10 caliber teams or tournament caliber teams in this conference. But it was great to see for this UCLA program sell it out, their best attendance for a home game, I believe, ever, for a team that's looking to win an NCAA championship and make it to the NCAA Final Four for the first time in program history after the previous history prior to the NCAA women's basketball being registered as an NCAA sport. This is a team that can make program records. And when they were up 12, they could have put this game away. So that's the scary thing about this team, right? They could have won this game by 20, and they could have probably, maybe on a bad night where they weren't getting clutch threes by London Jones, they could have lost this game. I thought very highly of the Bruins, who did not shoot well in the first quarter, that they could have put this game to bed when SC couldn't make a field goal in the first, 5, 6, 7 minutes of that first quarter. JuJu couldn't make a shot. The Bruins could have put that game and knocked them out. In first quarters where they normally come out and just say, all right, good night, game's over. That's what they've been able to do this year. Team who was picked to finish second in the Pac-12, despite being a preseason top 2, 3, 4 team in the country, they are proving all the, not the doubters, but everybody, all the preseason voters, pretty much right with what they got, getting the portal. This is a team that seems together, has their lineup down, and on any given night, anybody can take over. And last year, this team would almost practically live and die by Charisma Osborne's ability to take over, hitch clutch shots. That is completely different this year. That is the difference between this year's team. The improvement of the sophomores, fortifying the paint, and now they can go beat good teams, great teams, even teams who have one of the 2 or 3 best players in the country. And if you don't know JuJu's name yet, you will eventually over the next few years as she blossoms into a great young player. The fact that she is so great that helped sell out this game. UCLA is remarkable. The scary, scary, scary thing is for this team, you're 12-0. They survived a scare against Princeton. They've beaten just about everybody in their path. Next, you got Oregon State. Oregon State, I believe, is one of the few teams unbeaten left in women's basketball. A couple weeks later, hey, what do you get? A road date with SC. And then you've got a road game against Colorado, who all they did was just blitz and destroy LSU in the opening night of the season on a neutral floor. You go to Utah. That's not going to be an easy place to play with the reigning Pac-12, you got some of the best players in the Pac-12 there. Then Washington, Wazoo, you go to Cal, you go to Stanford. Those are all happening within the next month. Road trips to a team that's fighting for a tournament berth, a team than Stanford that's been the class of the conference for a long time. You got Washington who's fighting up there. You've got Utah. Remember, Washington State is the Pac-12 tournament champs from a year ago. They know how to get on the run real quick. So many tough games coming up. And then you flip the calendar to mid-February. And I think the schedule, you think it wants to lighten up when you play the Arizona schools, but then you go to Oregon, you play Utah and Colorado again. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, it's Pac-12 tournament time for the final time in conference history. It's fun. There's going to be so many great games looking forward at this team, that the fact that they sold it out, they deserve a lot more attendance, maybe better attendance at the moment than the men, because I was shocked at the poor attendance for both teams so far. Both teams need an uptick in support for one reason or another. One, because they're super great. The other one, so they can get big-time home wins this year to get back in the tournament picture. This is a fun team for Corey Close. It's like you wish it could be March already, but that's just not where we're getting. So we got to live with the highs and lows for this team. And so far for women's hoops, a lot of highs. And after they host Oregon and Oregon State to finish off a 4-game homestand that started at the end of December. We'll go through the beginning first week of January. Then things get crazy again when they play SC in a couple weeks. A little less than 2 weeks' time. They get to play USC again. Nuts. Absolutely nuts. And we can't wait for this final Pac-12 women's basketball season. But what's coming up next for UCLA men's hoops? They've got to take on Stanford, who for the second straight year took down Arizona, hit a bunch of threes. It can also be a reminder of what Mick Cronin and the Bruins did not get when recruiting as fabulous as the freshman class was tabbed to be and still can be. They can all of a sudden look across the court at something they missed, something they could not get, some player who would immediately have a positive impact on this team, in my perspective, when we talk about it next on Locked On UCLA. All right, wrapping up Locked On UCLA today, Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer with you guys. The Bruins and Stanford. That is the Pac-12 home opener for UCLA against a Stanford team that also started 1-1 in Pac-12 play. Both teams jostling, if you will, for a position in the early stage of the Pac-12 standings. Final year, these two teams are conference members. UCLA comes in giving up about 62 points per game. Stanford, 6-6, coming off their big win against Arizona, is a team that averages nearly 80 points per game. This couldn't be a game with more clashing styles, right? Stanford, who plays as much offense, gives up close to as many points per game too. Maybe not 80, but they do give up 75 points per game so far this year. UCLA gives up 62, but to get to the 70s would be a really good day, a really, really good day. How is this game going to play out, right? How is this UCLA-Stanford game going to play out? A team that will shoot the three relentlessly. They are a 37% three-point shooting team, close to a 38%. They've shot and made 113 threes, 300 attempts over 12 games. They just light it up. And just for the second time in their program history, they brought in another grad transfer. You talk about bringing transfer portal. Stanford is almost non-existent, it seemed like, especially in men's basketball, when it came to the transfer portal, just because of the academic standards. How do you bring guys over? How does that work? Well, for the second straight year, their head coach brought in another transfer guy, and they've been able to find ways to shoot the ball effectively, right? It's going to start with Spencer Jones, a little bit of some Michael Jones mix in there. Brendan Angel has been really effective this year when he's been on the floor. And UCLA is going to have to find ways to guard five separate players, I should say, who average double figures, or four players, who average double figures. And a fifth one in Andrei Stojakovic, who UCLA was in the running for. They were in his final 2 or 3 when he was about to announce whether he was going to go to Stanford or UCLA. Stanford or UCLA, or maybe somewhere else. The son of Peja Stojakovic, if you remember him, longtime NBA player, could shoot the three. Will Stokin, Andrei Stojakovic. What is the one thing he has been really good at this year for Stanford? And no, he's not this super X factor, although he will be for the UCLA defense, who's going to have to guard everybody shooting the three. It's going to be, got to make sure you look at Stojakovic's numbers here. So far, he's only started half the games. He's coming off the bench, averaging 24 minutes a game, averaging about 9.5 points per game, closer to 10. And then he shoots 38% from three. He's made 16 threes in 42 attempts. Why is that so significant for UCLA that they missed out on him, right? Not that he would have had the same success, because UCLA does not have as many shooters, while Stanford, who just made a program record 16 threes against Arizona, Mick Cronin doesn't have as many shooters on his roster. You take a look at UCLA's numbers. Overall, the Bruins are less than 30% from three as a team this season. UCLA has made 63s in 200 attempts. They've played one more game than Stanford. They've attempted more than 100 less threes than Stanford. And the Cardinals are close to doubling up the Bruins in terms of made threes this season with less games played. So Stanford can live and die by the three when they make a lot of shots. They're tough to beat. And it's in Pauley Pavilion. I think UCLA will certainly watch those Stanford shooting numbers come back down to earth, I think, against the Bruins defense. Although the Bruins have struggled at times to guard the three, I think Mick Cronin will have them coached up enough with enough effort and intensity that Stanford won't shoot it. But the bigger point about Stojakovic, 16 for 42, 38%. On this UCLA team, there's only one player who is shooting 30% or better from three that's taken 10 or more threes. That's Will McClendon, who's shooting 40 to 43%. He's got outstanding numbers so far. The difference, though, is Stojakovic has made more threes and done so in either less or similar attempts than Sebastian Mack, who's shooting 25%, Dylan Andrews, Lazarus Stefanovic, who ironically both Andrews and Stefanovic are 16 for 56, identical numbers from three. That is 28%. So guys who are shooting a lot of threes just aren't making it. And Berke's made 3 of 9 in limited attempts, and I think clearly has a sweet three-point stroke. So I can't wait for the Bruins to give him the ball more with space, time on the perimeter, near the paint, in the mid-range. He clearly, I think, is a good shooting. He's got a good jump shot. The Bruins just have not tapped into it. But now we can look at, remember all these players the Bruins are in. I know one of the big things was I looked at the end of last year at Marcus Adams Jr. Was he going to be a Bruin? Well, he changed his school like 5 times. So maybe it's a better option that the Bruins did not land Marcus Adams Jr. And I'm not sure he maybe would have been the best fit with Mick Cronin with his intensity. And if someone's changing schools, obviously there's different factors to that. But changing commitments, going to a school, transferring already, that probably isn't going to lean into the best circumstance at UCLA. But you look at Stojakovic, one of many freshmen the Bruins didn't get, whether it's Ron Holland, who changed his mind after coaching changes, right? There's so many players the Bruins just missed out on, which pardon the reason is it's one thing for Cronin to have gone after 2 international guys, 3 international guys, but why did he go after so many this year, right? Why was the majority of this freshman class, while very talented and I think very capable, still a lot of chances to grow, he didn't go after a guy who, Andrei Stojakovic is someone who could truly have been a perfect UCLA fit, right? A guy who has probably grown up watching his father play, grown up, clearly has a much better three-point shot than most of the guys UCLA is throwing on the floor, especially as freshmen. And then you've got someone who certainly has the grades to get in. Obviously, you get into Stanford, you can get into UCLA. That's just one of the few missed things and missed opportunities for this UCLA team this year. Mick Cronin already talked about going after those super senior guys in the portal, right? Could the Bruins have been a bigger player for, say, a Hunter Dickinson this year? Obviously, he ended up leaving Michigan, going to Kansas, and he's been a big key cog over there. Maybe if the Bruins wanted a one-year stopgap, they could have gone with that. I'm not sure Cronin wants to do that. He likes building his players up, turning them into, well, this is the greatest, most recent example, Jaime Jaquez Jr., as he currently cruises around SoCal as a super popular member of the Miami Heat and on the short list for top 3 contenders for Rookie of the Year, even though he probably won't win that award. He'll certainly be on the short list and one of the finalists for that. Cronin likes to build up his players and make it a 4-year UCLA program, even in a day and age where we're slowly moving in between COVID years and one-and-dones. Man, you think about what they missed in this recruiting class. I think there's still a lot of talent, even though we haven't seen a Daimata. We haven't seen a lot of all these other players really shine, right? Jan Vide's been a little banged up. Maybe he can be someone that can take just a couple of minutes off of Andrew's load, and he can be more efficient moving forward, and that can be a game changer for the Bruins offense. Just Vide coming back, playing 5 minutes, 5 good minutes, can be a lot more for Andrews. What Mick Cronin talked about with these guys who had good practices, Ilan Fible, everybody wants to see more Ilan Fible, and the guy Mata, who needs to be better defender, as Mick Cronin quipped, I think, gave up more points in a couple of seconds playing defense than Mick Cronin would take going to the bathroom, quicker than go to the bathroom. Something like that was his quote to the press on this day. I think the Bruins will certainly obviously have a chance to compete against Stanford at home. There's no doubt about that. 2 500, right around 500 teams. I think the Bruins should be favored in this one. Can UCLA, most importantly in this game, score the basketball? They've proven that no matter who they play, they can find ways to struggle to score the basketball or turn it over or just not shoot as well. Stanford gives up 75 points per game. I think UCLA will hold Stanford to less than 80, but Cronin circled Feebley and Mata, who had good practices. He said Brandon Williams, it took 2 weeks before it translated into games. Think about these next 2 weeks. Very important. Can UCLA rebound, get some wins against the Bay Area schools? They should be favored at home against Stanford and Cal, absolutely. But can the Bruins execute? Turn that into offensive execution, get some touches for Berke, for McClendon, and for all these other players, and showcase, hey, we're growing, and they can build into a finished product. Stanford's going to shoot a lot of threes. Maybe the Bruins get the hands in the faces of those shooters and make sure they miss a lot more. All right, we'll talk more Locked On UCLA. We'll talk more UCLA football recruiting, portal next season, Big Ten. Bruins are going to be a Big Ten member in half a year. Close to it, 6 months, 7 months, right? It's coming sooner than we think. And that's scary and fun at the same time. We'll talk about all that in the future episodes of Locked On UCLA. So get your hands up, Bruins fans. Get ready for that A clap. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA, fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.